In a century exhausted by serial killers, treason retains a primitive power to shock, while betrayal possesses an irresistible hypnotic power.
Bond. James Bond.
Long before James Bond's debut, Britain's Secret Service enjoyed an impeccable reputation due to innate aristocracy, endless sophistication, and invincibility. Looking back then, it seems that Philby transformed this halo of glory into a farce, making his superiors not as masters of intrigue, but as complacent simpletons with their class prejudices, incapable of admitting that a man from all the right schools and clubs could betray his blue-blooded heritage. They were known as the Cambridge Five: Harold Adrian Russell Philby, a.k.a. Philby, Guy Burgess, Donald MacLean, Anthony Blunt, and John Cairncross. Those young British men, who rose in elite circles but served for decades, before and after World War II, as Soviet agents, penetrated the very heart of Britain's power and intelligence headquarters. Among five, Philby was the smartest and craftiest. The elusive Harold Adrian Russell, known as Philby. He always took exceptional efforts to protect himself from risks and failures, outlasting the others before he was finally revealed. Philby, a descendant of an old English family, was born in 1912 in Umballa, an Indian city, then part of British India, at the court of the Raja, where his father, Philby the Elder, Harry St. John Bridger Philby, served as a diplomat. Philby the Elder was perhaps one of the most eccentric figures in the British imperial world. A former British Army officer, explorer, and writer who loved traveling, father finally converted to Islam and adopted the name Abdullah Philby. He had two wives. The first was an Englishwoman from a family of aristocrats and military. The second was a Moor like the serf. Thus, he became a close advisor to Abdulaziz ibn Saud, the future king of Saudi Arabia. A dreamy single child who spends long hours drawing geographical maps with fictional countries he created with incredible imagination. This unusual passion led him to a series of maps with fictional countries where intricate capes, improbably placed bays, and hills could be found. Strangely, they all of them were named the same: Spyglass Hill. Cartography was perhaps his truly and only passion. The nickname Kim, given by his father, sounds now almost prophetic. The literary spy boy from Kipling's novel and the real Philby, who became one of the most famous double agents of the 20th century, are combined with a frighteningly accurate irony of fate. Upon returning to Britain, Philby attended prestigious schools. Teachers at Westminster School noted his extraordinary memory and rare independence. Studying history and economics at Trinity College, Cambridge, he revealed much interest to Marxist ideas and joined student radical clubs. He was recruited by the Vienna branch of the Comintern and began working for Soviet intelligence in Austria and Spain then. Under the guise of a correspondent for the Times newspaper, he wrote articles sympathetic to supporters of Francisco Franco before Franco came to power, winning the trust for nationalists. Ironically, he would later receive the Order of the Red Cross from Franco himself in appreciation of this work. This carefully crafted myth likely unleashed his way into British intelligence, where for years he sent Britain's top-secret documents to Moscow. This story later was covered by major British broadsheets and books. Charming and charismatic, Philby would look at you with his pale blue eyes from beneath an unruly lock of hair, and you would find yourself listening with rapt attention. The sudden stutter that appeared from time to time gave him a certain appealing fragility. His friend, the novelist Graham Greene, would later call them stuttering witticisms. With remarkable ease, he drew men and women alike to himself, rich and poor, old and young. Philby loved to laugh, was always the first to suggest a drink, never forgot to ask after your ailing aunt, and remembered the names of your children. This humanity was disarming. It felt as though he listened with genuine curiosity and interest to you alone. It is well known that spies were notorious drinkers. But no Bond, whether played by Sean Connery or Timothy Dalton, could rival the sheer scale and persistence with which the real Kim Philby consumed alcohol. His close friend, Nicholas Elliott, recalled that he was a formidable drinker. More in jest than with any malicious intent, Kim would provoke arguments, generously topping up everyone's glasses as he debated politics and intelligence. He was the kind of man who worked to win followers, knew friends more than just liked him. In the end, they agreed, and they adored Kim. The incredible espionage adventures of the elusive Philby have formed the basis for many books and films. But today I want to recall another, no less exciting side of his life: his love affairs. After all, Philby was married 4 times. Like a magnetic vortex, he attracted and made women fall in love with him. They abandoned their husbands and children for him, faithfully following him, like the wives of the Decembrists. They believed him, and he, as usual, loved and deceived at the same time, playing on feelings in another thoughtful game, the rules of which were set exclusively by him. First time to a Viennese revolutionary, then to an Englishwoman working at Marks & Spencer, then to an American media editor, and finally to a Russian media editor and documents corrector. Nicholas Elliott was always struck by the loyalty and attachment Philby inspired in women. Only years later, Elliott realized that Philby's marital infidelity was an inseparable part of a life devoted to secrecy. In the autumn of 1933, political passions between the left and the right flared up in the Austrian capital. Philby, who had already secretly converted to communist ideology, dreamed of personal participation in the historical Moloch. Under the pretext of improving his German, he goes to Vienna. Louis Ghiberti, a part of Parisian Comintern, introduces Kim to Alice Coleman, known as Litzy. It was love at first sight. Cheerful brunette, half Jewish. According to one of his contemporaries, Litzy was a tremendous little sex bot. Newly divorced, being a part of a local organization, she was also a focal point for Soviet intelligence. Litzy Friedman defies the usual image of the Cambridge spies. A photo shows her with thick cropped hair, a sleeveless dress, and bare legs, more like she just came from 1960X. Her energetic, relaxed pose is turned as if listening, reflecting an intelligent young woman who feels at ease. When Philby met her, he was still a virgin and politically naive. Then she quickly corrected both deficiencies. Philby was instantly captivated. They made love in the snow. Later he mentioned that actually it was quite warm once he got used to it. Litzy was wanted by the authorities, and Philby's British passport offered her protection. He married her at Vienna City Hall in February 1934. This was by no means a cold union of convenience, nor a mere party formality. Philby later admitted that politics had brought them together, but the feeling itself was real. Philby later said that although the basis of our relationship was political to some extent, I truly loved her, and she loved me. She may have been the only woman in his life with whom he did not divide himself in two, neither in belief nor in bed. A few months later, in London, he would meet a man who would turn his life upside down. A man of exceptional presence, short, barely in his 30s, with curly blonde hair, a sharp, lively gaze, and a lightness in his step. He introduced himself simply as Otto, a name like a password. Philby would not know his real name for decades as Arnold Deutsch, a former sexologist and follower of Wilhelm Reich, a left-wing Freudian dissident who considered healthy orgasm a key to both personal and societal revolution. It was revealed much later that Deutsch was the chief recruiter for Soviet intelligence in the UK and the architect of what would become the Cambridge spy ring. In 1939, while working as a correspondent in Spain, Philby began an affair with Frances D'Oblay, Lady Lindsay Hogg, a divorced actress and aristocrat who openly liked Franco and Hitler. In the final months before the war, they traveled together across Spain. Philby deliberately distanced himself from left-wing circles in order to penetrate the British elite. He and Litzy Friedman parted ways, although they remained in contact for many years, and their formal divorce was not finalized until 1946. Friedman lived in East Berlin with German Jewish refugee George Honigmann, who became editor of the Berliner Zeitung. On September 3, 1939, when Neville Chamberlain declared war on Nazi Germany, Kim Philby was introduced to his second wife, Aileen Furse. Philby later recalled that meeting stayed with him for a long time because it was catastrophic for the whole world and for himself. The matchmaker was his longtime friend and influential politician activist, Flora Solomon, who would eventually play a key role in exposing him later. Flora, the daughter of a wealthy Russian Jewish oil and gold magnate, lived at the crossroads of eras and ideologies. In her past, she had a romance with Alexander Kerensky, the head of overthrown the Russian provisional government. Later, Flora was married to a British colonel who fought in World War I. Her life rolled like a novel. Her personal trinity she described as Russian soul, Jewish heart, British passport. Devoting herself to charity throughout her life. In 1939, she was instrumental in establishing a social welfare system for employees of the Marks and Spencer chain. At the Marble Arch branch, she befriended Aileen Furse, a store detective. This connection would alter both their lives. Flora later remembered Aileen as belonging to the old-fashioned county class. She was typically English, slim, attractive, and very patriotic, but socially awkward and unsure of herself around others. Historian Anthony Cave Brown wrote that Aileen was the ideal woman for Philby. She knew little about politics and was not well read, but she was intelligent, practical, and completely loyal, both personally and politically. She suited the image of a modern conservative that Philby projected at the times. However, Aileen's mother remained unconvinced and disapproved of him, suspecting he held extreme left-wing views. Aileen Furse was born in colonial India and raised in a well-connected family. One relative was Winston Churchill's personal secretary when he served as colonial secretary. Another later led the Women's Royal Naval Service and the World Bureau of Girl Guides. Her family believed strongly in marriage vows and straightforward patriotism. To Aileen, Kim was simply a senior Foreign Office official and a devoted father. For Philby, however, everything came second to his idealistic beliefs: friendship, family, even marriage. A Soviet spy known as Stanley, he regularly reported on his MI6 work to Moscow. He even wrote about Aileen in cold, political terms, judging her beliefs as ideological flaws and claiming he could cure her of them. He was 34, she 35. 7 months pregnant with their fourth child, Miranda, Aileen married in the presence of Thomas Harris and Flora Solomon. In the book of Philip Knightley, Philby, the master spy of the K.G.B, says that Aileen gradually stopped questioning her husband's frequent absences. He explained them only as work-related, and she did not press for details. Yet Aileen, too, was hiding something. In 1948, after a series of unexplained illnesses, Philby arranged for her to be examined in Switzerland with the help of his friend Nicholas Elliott, then head of MI6 in Bern. There, a psychologist concluded that since her teenage years, Aileen had suffered from a severe compulsive disorder, leading her to harm herself in secret. Elliott later observed that this discovery deeply wounded Philby's pride, as his wife had concealed an inner life entirely unknown to him. He was shocked to learn from a leading psychologist that she had suffered since adolescence from a severe compulsive disorder. At times, it led her to cut and mutilate herself and to inject her own urine. Biographer Philip Knightley noted that her family had long recognized a tendency towards self-destructive behavior, especially during periods when she felt emotionally neglected. Over the following years, Eileen's mental health continued to deteriorate. She became increasingly uneasy in social situations and lacked confidence in company. Ben McIntyre has suggested that her distress may also have reflected early doubts about her marriage, as she began to question whether her husband was truly the charming, articulate, and straightforward official he appeared to be. Later, Philby was appointed as SGS representative in Washington, D.C., and the family moved to the United States. There were rumors that in 1950 or so, he was being discussed as a possible future head of MI6. Their home was filled with guests and social gatherings, but beneath the surface, tensions were mounting. As Knightley observed, alcohol use increased on both sides, and the birth of their fifth child, Harry, who suffered from seizures, placed an emotional strain on Aileen that she found increasingly difficult to bear. In about 1951, after Burgess and McLean defected, Philby was summoned to MI6, but the case against him was dropped. He returned to London and formally left MI6 that September, continuing however limited work and receiving close to £4,000 in compensation. Around this time, at a dinner party, Aileen cautiously confronted her husband and called him third man. She had come to see that he had deceived her from the start, but Philby denied everything. This realization pushed Aileen into a psychological crisis from which she never fully recovered. The 33 volumes of intercepted recordings from Philby's home phone revealed not espionage, but the collapse of his family life. Philby later told friends that his wife had reported him to the authorities, harming his career, and even claimed she had tried to harm him, leading him to take extreme precautions. Aileen, meanwhile, increasingly feared her husband's intentions. Her psychiatrist, acting secretly and unethically, passed information to MI5. One report concluded that Philby's sustained psychological pressure had driven Aileen towards suicidal despair. With their 5 children away at boarding school, Aileen Philby lived alone in a dark house in Crowborough, East Sussex. As her friend Flora Solomon later observed, she kept the house going in the hope that her unsettled husband might return. A few years later, Elliott sent him to Beirut as a correspondent for The Observer. Her condition worsened after this news, the move that effectively ended their marriage. Burdened by the strain of his betrayal and by the stress of his public acquittal, Aileen slipped into severe alcoholism. In December 1957, she was found dead in her Crowborough bedroom by her eldest daughter. Friends believed she had taken her own life through alcohol and pills, while her psychiatrist suspected her husband's involvement. The coroner ruled that she died of heart failure, myocardial degeneration, tuberculosis, and a respiratory infection, with alcoholism accelerating her death. She was 47. Flora Solomon later held Philby responsible and endeavored to strike him from memory. Eleanor Kearns was born in Seattle and graduated from the University of Washington before working at the advertising agency J. Walter Thompson in San Francisco. When she met Kim Philby in September 1956, she was married to Sam Brewer, a New York Times correspondent in Beirut. They met at the St. George Hotel, where Philby was sitting alone at the bar and was invited by Eleanor to join her group. Eleanor later described being drawn to Philby's loneliness, reserve, and old-fashioned manners. He stood apart from other journalists and created an atmosphere of intimacy that encouraged confidence and trust. She and her friends soon took him into their circle. Eleanor was often described as tall, tough, and socially confident, yet inwardly romantic and politically inexperienced, traits that made her appealing to a solitary and secretive man. Historian Anthony K. Brown has argued that within weeks they became lovers, meeting discreetly in cafes like the Shaky Floor, on beaches, and in the hills outside Beirut. Philby spent Christmas with the Brewers, debating world affairs with Sam while quietly pursuing a relationship with Eleanor. The affair continued after they married in London in January 1959. In January 1963, The couple were invited to a dinner at the British Embassy in Beirut. Philby never arrived. That night, without warning Eleanor, he boarded a Soviet ship and vanished to Moscow. Eleanor was shocked to realize that Philby had lied throughout their marriage, just as he had deceived Aileen first in his previous marriage and Nicholas Elliott in friendship. For months after Philby's disappearance, she flew to London, where the press awaited news of the third man. Elliott met her at the airport and took her to lunch to avoid journalists, warning her firmly not to consider traveling to Moscow. By the end of the day, tearful and sedated, Eleanor was convinced that her husband was indeed a spy, though she still hoped to join him in Moscow. She arrived in Moscow in September 1963, wearing a turban and dark glasses, and was met by Philby and his K.G.B. aide. Their marriage continued in outward form, but the relationship was irreparably broken. Moscow felt gray, cold, and lonely, and Eleanor realized that Philby consistently placed his political commitments above personal ties. In Moscow, he renewed contact with Donald MacLean and his wife Melinda, and the two couples spent time together socially. In 1964, Eleanor returned to the United States. During her 5-month absence, Philby and Melinda MacLean began an affair. Philby's nature was unchanged, and relentless cycle of deception and betrayal that defined his life repeated. Many years later, Philby's Russian wife would arrange the sale of his personal belongings at a Sotheby's auction. A book gifted by Melinda MacLean drew particular attention and was sold for about £4,000, 5 times its estimate. The first page had a playful dedication: "An orgasm a day keeps the doctor away." Eleanor returned, discovered the affair, and left him. Philby made no attempt to stop her. A K.G.B. officer sent her off at the airport with tulips. After separating from Philby in 1965, Eleanor lived in Ireland, then Tunisia, and died in California at 54. In 1970, 7 years after fleeing to Moscow, Philby met Rufina Pokova, a 38-year-old Muscovite of Polish descent, 20 years his junior. Under the alias Mr. Martinson, he lived in Moscow for the rest of his life. After some persistence, Rufina became his 4th wife, and the K.G.B. sent a wedding gift: humble English bone china tea set. The couple lived modestly in the historic district Tverskaya for 18 years. Philby's private library and a 17th-century desk were shipped from England, reflecting the continued importance of elegance when possible. They had no children, but Philby's children from earlier marriage visited regularly, and the family spent time together. Rufina helped moderate Philby's drinking, ensuring it remained controlled. Their daily routine was simple. Mornings began with BBC broadcasts and tea, evenings with measured drinks, and a calm domestic life in their Moscow apartment, with personal touches like reindeer skins and a Rigatube radio. All behind the Iron Curtain. Eleanor Brewer Philby died 3 years after returning to the United States. She wrote memoirs reflecting on her experience, recognizing that Philby had betrayed many, including herself, and concluding that no one can ever fully know another person. Now I ask myself, would Philby have committed those cruel betrayals and ruined so many lives if he had known that life behind the Iron Curtain was far from his idealized imaginary maps with emerald hills? And I have no answer.